And welcome back to the channel, and of course, happy new year. I do hope you all had a wonderful festive period, a lovely Christmas, and enjoyed some reveling last night as we saw in 2026. So who's best positioned to win this year then, 2026? Well, look, you can see the polling averages on your screen here as we come into this new year. And look, I think Reform are best poised to win this year, as they undoubtedly won 2025. But I do think they're entering 2026 in a less advantageous place than they're entering 2025, actually. If we come down to look at the graph of polling average, look, you can see it's the first time since the general election where Reform are having a bit of a stumble, just in terms of their vote share in opinion polls. It stagnated after September when they hit about 31% on average across the pollsters, and since then it's just been slowly but surely dropping off. And then over the last quarter of 2025, they've come all the way down to 27.5%. So, like I say, this is just the first time in this story of Reform since the general election of them just having a little bit of a moment, going in the wrong direction. I think at the end of 2025, they lost control of the agenda a little bit. Stories about Nigel Farage at school, the guy who took money from Russia. A few things. Just now, you can say it's a concerted media campaign against them, but that doesn't change the fact that the narrative did get away from them a little bit. So I think coming into this year, they've got to take hold of the agenda again, set the agenda, which they've been very good at doing since the general election. And something that the Conservatives haven't really been able to do. I still don't think they've been able to do it. And that even Labour in government, with the ability to, dictate what happens in our parliament, Keir Starmer hasn't been able to set the agenda either. So it has been pretty much all determined by Reform, and they just need to get back on top of that. And look, I think, like I say, you can't go from about 15% all the way up to 40% to win an election in a straight line. There is almost certainly going to be periods like this, but it's going to be, we'll have to wait and see in the next few weeks how it all shakes out. Can they turn it round? Of course they need to, because the Conservatives are actually on a bit of a bounce. Look, they're up at 20%. It's the highest they've been since, I think it was April last year. 20.1, yeah. So, yeah, late April, well, early May was when they were last here. So, look, they are on a little bit of a bounce at the moment. I don't necessarily know why. Let me know in the comments what you think on that. But you can see the gap that all those two lines have started to narrow over the last few months of 2025. And can the Conservatives capitalise on this little Reform stumble? Can they gain some momentum in towards May, keep that gap narrowing, and essentially Kemi Badenoch would save her skin then? In that case, I still don't necessarily see that happening. I think for the Tories, it's going to be a very, very painful May 2026 local elections, as it was in May 2025. I think they're facing wipeout pretty much in Scotland and Wales. And in England, they're less exposed, but I think a lot of the council seats they are defending, they're going to come up against some pretty fierce competition from Reform. And so, yeah, I've, as you know, if you've been watching the channel for a little while, I've always been saying, I think Kemi's got until May, and then after that will be very, very difficult for her. But who knows? Let's see. Maybe the Conservatives can start setting the agenda, and flip the tide with Reform. Let me know what you think in the comments about all this as we head into the new year. As for Labour, look, it's just a disaster scene, isn't it? 35% in the general election, down now at 18%. The line, as you can see, is only going in one direction, and actually, if anything, at the end there, it's the curve is steepening downwards. Obviously, that's commensurate with the Green Party, who have been on an incredible run since sort of late 2025, September. They were down at 8.9%, finishing the year at 13. Well, let's call it 14%, really. Yeah, they're on an incredible surge. They are pinching that youth vote from the Labour Party, that student vote. I think they're pinching probably some of the ethnic minority vote as well. And also, I mean, as we saw in some of our most recent preview videos, I think they're starting to pinch conservative voters as well. And that's why I'm not necessarily sure this conservative trajectory can continue, because I think obviously the Conservatives are the party who have who are traditionally at first the most vulnerable to reform. I think that's actually probably changed. I think Labour have actually probably suffered more from reform now than the Tories have, or maybe equal. But the Tories have a weakness of losing votes to the Greens as well, as we've seen. I said these very leafy middle class areas of the country, quite relatively wealthy or comfortable at least, and also areas that tend to be very high majority white populations. A lot of them, or a few of them, are going to the Green Party instead of the Conservatives. So they have that flank exposed as well. The Liberal Democrats, I mean, I just find this party so boring to talk about, because look at that line. It's essentially straight. Look, they do very well in the by-elections. They're very, very good at local election campaigning and all that. They defend their seats remarkably well. And their target seats that they have, they go after, tooth and claw, and they tend to do very, very well. But in terms of national breakthrough, I mean, just look at the line. It starts in the general election 2024 at 12.6%, and it ends 2025 at 13.8%. So they moved about 1%, and actually the Greens are above them now. So yeah, look, this party's, like I say, it's just a bit dull. And like I say, I think this is their ceiling of where they're at in the Commons. I don't see them getting into three figures in terms of seats, because they just don't have the cut through as it stands. So like you can see, they just never really capitalised on what was a very good general election for them. They were benefits of the first past the post system massively. Getting a decent amount less share of the vote than Reform, and massively more seats. And yeah, like I say, I just don't see any national cut through for them. I mean, what do you think of the Liberal Democrats? Are they exciting? Do you see that are they going to explode upwards anytime soon? I don't see that coming personally, really. So that's how the polls stand as we start 2026. Reform got a bit of work to do if they're going to change the trajectory of that line around. Can the Conservatives maintain their momentum in an upwards direction? I think not. But we'll wait and see. I do think, in all fairness, and I have said on the channel recently, I do think Kemi Badenoch has improved her performances just sort of on the camera, in the Commons. I think she looks much more sure of herself. She looks like she's enjoying herself a bit more, which helps with image. But I don't necessarily think she has the charisma or the vision to turn the Conservative Party around. And if you watched the video, I excoriated her because I think her position should be untenable. She told her councillors, or she said, the Conservative Party does not want the local elections in May 2026 to be cancelled. And her own councillors, the day after, took up the government's offer to cancel elections in East and West Sussex, and she did nothing about it. I think that makes her position as leader of the party look very, very weak. And she's either a liar or she's like I say, she's very weak and is a sitting duck. So that's my opinion on her kind of personally. But from a more objective viewpoint, yeah, can she turn it around? I don't necessarily think that she can. And that's it. In terms of, I suppose, how do Reform go about winning 2026? Well, I think they have to obviously start improving this number 27.5 and get that up towards 40%. Honestly, I think if they're going to be treated as a genuine majority in their own right government in waiting, which is what they want to be seen as, you've got to start making on towards that 40% mark. I don't think they have to get to 40% this year, assuming still that the election is in 2029. Of course, we know, because of what they've said, Reform is expecting an election as soon as next year, 2027. But this year, at the end of, as we come to do this video in a year's time, I think this Reform number must be above 35%, and getting on towards that 40% would be what I would say. Outside of that, obviously the local elections is going to be the big event. Now, look, commensurate with their polling sort of dropping off a bit nationally, you can see that in Wales they've fallen behind Plaid now in terms of the nowcast election maps nowcast projection for seats in the Welsh Parliament after May. So look, there's work to do for Reform in this first quarter of 2026. They've got to turn it around a little bit. Now, if you remember, we did the Wales or Welsh Parliament preview videos, the first one we did on the channel, looking ahead to 2026, and I think it still stands that it's very, very close in a number of these constituencies. Remember, it's all being done by the D'Hondt method. We're not going to go into that now, but essentially very small, slight changes in vote share for any one party can actually really change the outlook of how these seats get distributed. So I think it's very much on a knife edge still with Wales. I think a lot will change still between now and May, but I think for Reform to win 2026, I think they have to at least equal Plaid. Really, I think they have to get more seats. I think they should be winning the Welsh election. If they lose to Plaid in terms of number of seats, I think that's not great. So I think there's work to do in Wales. I think they have to win the just on number. I don't think they'll govern Wales. I think that's too much of a stretch. I don't think they'll be able to get a majority in their own right. The Conservatives, as you can see on 6, are just they're going to be wiped in Wales. That's what I mean. I think it's looking. There's a lot of work to do for Kemi if she is going to turn it round. So the Conservatives aren't going to be enough of a force for them to go in coalition with them, and none of the other parties obviously are going to. So I don't think Reform are going to govern Wales, but I do think they have to win in terms of number of seats. So work to do there. As for Scotland, I think things look a bit rosy. Now, obviously, that looks like SNP domination. If you watch the if you watch the Scottish preview video that we did a few weeks ago, you'll know that I suppose it is in some ways, but I think similar in Scotland to Labour in 2024, they are winning by virtue of being the least disliked party. And as we've seen with the Labour government in Westminster, that is a very shaky ground upon which to win an election. Now, I think Reform currently are in a very good place, looking at these charts, to be in second place in terms of seats. I think if I remember rightly, when we did our video, we came up with them having, I think, one more seat than Labour. Again, I think a lot can change between now and the election. If they can increase that margin between second and third, that will help them. But either way, they're going to have a presence in the Scottish Parliament, and if they can provide a dignified and decent opposition to the SNP government, things could change in Scotland quite dramatically, actually, I think. Because, like I say, we've seen in Westminster the danger for a government that gets in on a lowish share of the vote and not particularly popular with the people. It can all fall apart very, very quickly. And so with the SNP also having been in government for so long, they cannot use, it was the previous lot's fault. It's all on them. And I think if Reform handle it right, now let me know what you think, because like I always say, I'm not that confident on Scotland all that much. But I think there is actually some fertile ground in Scotland. I never thought Reform were going to be polling these sorts of numbers in Scotland. You know, getting on for 20% and second place ahead of Labour. I never thought that was possible for them. So my mindset slightly shifted in Scotland for Reform. And like I say, I think if they can provide a good opposition, a vocal opposition, and if they can control the narrative of the agenda up in Scotland, like they've managed to do in Westminster for the most part since the general election, I think they could become quite popular in Scotland as the foil to the SNP. But let me know what you think. I think in terms of 2026, Reform need to just keep this going. I think there's, like I say, room for them to grow. I think they must finish second, beat Labour, and come in second place. That would be the best result for them. They're not going to obviously win. If Labour have some sort of resurgence, as you can see, the polls are very close. If Reform finish in third behind Labour, is that a win? I think it wouldn't be ideal considering where they are. If it's close, I think it's okay. If they end up being a fairly distant third, which I don't see as all that likely, then that again is a bit more troublesome. But I think at the moment, if they can maintain this, I think that would be all they need to do in Scotland. I think that'd be a good result for them. And as for England, well, look, we've been going through our regional previews. We've done a number of places. There's still a few more to do, which I'll try and get done as soon as I can. I think for Reform, they've got to focus West Midlands, North West, Yorkshire, and the North East. I think because as we've said on these preview videos, there's a number of councils who are having full elections because of ward changes. If they can flip a number of those, which I think they're in a very, very good position to do, from Labour to Reform control, or even from Labour majority to Reform largest party, I think that's what they need to do. They need to I think this map is going to change massively. So keep watching the channel this year as we get more stuck into previews and getting more into predictions and projections. It's worth coming to subscribe just to see me make a projection and get proved utterly wrong in May. But I think the northeast, as we saw a few weeks ago in our video, this could all change massively up here. A lot of red. I think, to be honest, I think there's a decent potential. There's little to no red left on that map after May. And then through Yorkshire and the northwest, it's a very similar story. Labour's support has just cratered. You've got also in Yorkshire and the northwest, you've got that in Gaza independent factor as well. It's all going on for Labour, and it's not good at all. So I think that's how Reform win 2026, push on towards 40% of the vote in national opinion polling, be the largest party in Wales, be the second largest party in Scotland, or at least a very close third to Labour, and take a handful of councils away from the Labour Party in England. And I think that'll be Reform winning 2026. Who else can win? Well, I suppose at the moment the best place one to actually win 2026 would be the Conservative Party. If they can continue that line going upwards, and look, if the trajectories were to continue like that, they would cross over this year, and the Tories would end up leading the polls, Reform in second. Look, if the Conservatives end this year leading the polls, they don't lose that many councillors. They may even gain some councillors if their polling has really increased. They might gain some off the Lib Dems maybe, or even Labour. Of course, then I think the Conservatives would win 2026. That would be dreamland for the Conservatives. Like I say, I don't know how necessarily likely that is, but if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, because we're going to follow this all throughout the year. Of course, we've got the May elections just around the corner now. We're in 2026. We've got a few months to go. We're going to be ramping up those preview videos, looking ahead to them, and of course, all culminating with the inaugural Election Watch live stream on election night. So it'd be great to have as many of you there as can make it. I know it is a school night, but it should be a bit of good fun, even if you could just turn up for the first hour or so. Yeah, it'd be good fun. I'm really looking forward to it. So thank everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. And just before I go, I must remember to remind you, we've got no by-elections for a little while. I know that's obviously the bread and butter of the channel. The first by-elections this year are in Gosport and York, and they're on the 15th of January. So on the 16th, Friday the 16th, I'll try and get a video out for those, just those two. So it'll be a quiet video just to ease us into the year. So do make sure you're subscribed up, notification bell hit, of course, so you don't miss those videos. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.